My name is Ray Raymond. I live here in Kaufman, and I grew up in Kaufman County. And I agreed to serve as chairman of the building of this park. I was out here on the ground probably almost daily for 2 years because I had retired, and I had the time to put in to make sure that it was done properly. And I did a lot of this work. In fact, I did most of the inlaid brick that you see. To go back and talk about the beginning of the park, we had about 5 local veterans here in Kaufman that had been talking probably 6 or 8 years about building a Veterans Memorial Park, and hadn't gotten any farther than just talk. And I would like to name those 5 people that were so instrumental in causing this to happen. The first one was Major General William Becker, who grew up just east of Kaufman here a little ways. Then we had Senator Doyle Willis. He was from Kemp, Texas. And then we had Don Stowe, who was our county service officer, lived here in Kaufman. Then we had Rex de Fleming, who was the commander of the American Legion post here in Kaufman. And then we had Colonel Roy Chappell, who was a prisoner of war during World War II. And just a side story about Mr. Chappell, or Colonel Chappell, he escaped 3 different times during his period in the anyway, they asked me to chair this movement, and so I agreed. And I told them that I would put together a committee. So I went to each community in the county and asked that 2 people from each community serve on this large committee, countywide committee, and I was really fortunate, and just about all the folks that I called on agreed to do it. And so that made up with a number of communities that we have in Kaufman County that caused us to have a 28-member committee. Anyway, I started working with the committee and told them our plans. I hired he didn't charge us for his service, but I asked a local architect here to help me design and plan the park. And so his name was Bruce Henley. And so Bruce and I worked together probably a couple of years. The park consists of 9 large granite monuments, a stage area with 3 large pyramid flagpoles, a large bronze eagle as a centerpiece atop of a granite monument, and a M60 armor tank is on display behind the stage area. 38 engraved benches are positioned throughout the park. 450 engraved brick pavers are inlaid throughout the park. We installed 40 trees around the park area. We have an 8-foot bronze soldier at the entrance of the park. In our effort in raising money for the park, when we had our first meeting, I told the committee that we probably could do it for $150,000, but that didn't go very far, because by the time we completed the park, we had spent $700,000, and so it was that's how much money we raised. We had just a few thousand dollars left over from the $700,000 that we raised after we completed the park. This money all came from individuals, organizations, and businesses and companies in Kaufman County. Some contributions have come from people from around the country that had heard about the park and were at one time maybe from Kaufman County. There are 5,500 names in this park. All of them are Kaufman County individuals.
My name is Richard Bramblitt, B-R-A-M-B-L-I-T-T. Better known as Dick Bramblitt. And we started this back in 2003. I know I worked about 3 years on these names. Double checking. And there was no magic list. We had to dig them up. I spent a lot of time over there in that library collecting birth certificates of people from probably about 1919 through 1925. And then I'd make a list of those names, and then I'd go out and double check and see if I could connect them to Kaufman County and any war with a cemetery or something with a grave marker or what have you. I got CDs running up my ears where I washed names and sorted them and what have you, but it just gives me a feeling of great gratitude. You know, we're talking about people that served our country. We don't leave anybody out.
Behind the park is a replica of the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C. The wall displays the 58,000 soldiers killed in the Vietnam War. Memorial services are held here each May and November. We have a 5-member park board that is named by the Commissioner's Court for the management of the park. Back in the beginning of the development of the park, after we got organized, General William Becker and I went to the Commissioner's Court and asked them if we had looked at this particular piece of property, and we felt that it would be ideal for a park, having been sandwiched between the single appraisal district and the library, gave us the opportunity to use their parking space, and therefore we didn't have to raise the funds to build a parking area, which turned out to really be great for us. But anyway, General William Becker and I went to the Commissioner's Court and told the Commissioner's Court of our plans, and we asked them if they would dedicate this 2 acres to the Veterans Organization to put the park on. And so we had a good discussion at the first meeting, and they said for us to come back the next month, that they would have to have a second reading and they would vote at that time. And so we went back to the Commissioner's Court the next month, and they voted unanimously to give us, or to dedicate this 2 acres for the park. I'd like to tell just a little story about this. This property here, all this property we're looking at, where the single appraisal, the library, and the children's shelter, this was at one time was a poor farm, Kaufman County Poor Farm. Back in 1869, I believe, the state of Texas passed an order or legislation that said that each county in Texas had to have a poor farm, and that was for indigent people. And so each county in the state established a poor farm. Kaufman County's poor farm here was 408 acres. And so it operated as the indigent care facility for a long time, and then it moved over to be the farm where they kept prisoners, county prisoners. We have a jail over here at the corner behind the single appraisal district. But anyway, that's how it all came about. And so this land that these facilities that are sitting on today, at one time was the Kaufman County Poor Farm. And I have been told that Kaufman County is the only poor farm, or Kaufman County owns the only poor farm in the state of Texas. All of them have vanished. So I think that's an interesting little story. I'd just like to say that this building this Veterans Park has been one of the most rewarding projects to me that I have worked on, and I've worked on numerous projects throughout the county. But people have been so gracious and so good. I don't think I have ever asked anyone for money or funds that turned me down. And it was just amazing. When I started constructing the park, I had a contract out of Athens, Texas that did this concrete work for me. And it was about a $80,000 job invoice that I was going to get. and I only had about $40,000 in the bank. And so I thought, I went home and told my wife, I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be getting that $80,000 invoice from Mr. West down at Athens, and I only have $40,000 in the bank. And she said, well, just pray about it, it'll come in. And sure enough, every time that I'd get an invoice, I wouldn't have to tell people. Money would just come in. I don't know, it seemed like somebody knew it, you know. But anyway, that's, I just can't thank the people of Kaufman County and everyone who has contributed to this park for being so nice and opening their hearts and pocketbooks to make this park possible. Then I'd like to thank those who served on the committee in their support in seeing this park through. And I'd like to thank Mr. Henry Hallman with Hallman Monuments in Wills Point for the great job they did in engraving all of these names on all these sheets of granite. And I thank the Kaufman County Commissioners Court for the cooperation that they showed us and gave us for the land and support that they've done. And I'd like to thank Johnny Countryman. Johnny is the one that is responsible for purchasing and installing the Vietnam Wall. Johnny has lived in Kaufman well, he was born here, but he left for a few years but came back. Johnny has conducted all of our memorial services each year, probably for the last 35 years. And he's really a dedicated veteran. And so I just want to thank him for what he means to this park. And I'd like to thank my wife. She was a supporter of this park. And then I'd thank Richard Dick Bramlett for the great work that he put in on securing the names, getting the names together for the park.
But it's very satisfying to me. One of the greatest achievements of my life, except my kids. And sometimes I think it's better now.
And then Mr. James Crouch over in Terrell, who served as my vice chairman. I just had a good group of people working with me and just had great support from everyone. That's why we have such a nice, beautiful park today. I'm a veteran. I have two brothers that's on this wall here that were Korean veterans. There were 3 boys in my family, and all 3 of us served in the military. But anyway, I've just always had a soft spot in my heart for veterans and knowing what suffering that goes into war, and if only our people could understand what these people do to preserve our freedom, they'd be much more thankful than what they are today, I think. And so I just had a desire and a want to see that Kaufman County had a nice Veterans Memorial Park. Through my life, my wife and I, we always would take trips, 1 or 2 trips a year, all over the United States, and it didn't matter. I worked at the Rural Electric Co-op out here for 40 years, and I was manager 30 years. And my wife worked at the Kaufman County for 10 years in the DA office, and then she started teaching school and taught school 29 years. But anyway, we had those 3 children, and so we made it a point to go on nice vacations each year. And regardless where we'd go, we'd look at courthouses, rural electric co-op buildings, offices, and veterans memorials. I don't know how many veterans memorials that I've looked at in the United States. Now I want to tell you this, the day that we completed this and had the dedication, General William Becker's wife came to me, and General Becker fought in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And she came right over there with that sacrifice monument, and she put her arm around my shoulder and she said, "Ray, I want to tell you, General Bill and I have traveled the world. And she said, you will not believe how many memorials that we've seen. And she said, I want to tell you, this is the prettiest one. She said, this is the prettiest memorial that we've seen. So that was my pay.